given the process that so many of us are going through and the process that we are bearing witness to on the planet as she goes through her dark night of the soul and this great opportunity of awakening, I wanted to speak to the process of awakening and the fact that there is no coming to consciousness. There is no awakening without pain. And just as there is no coming to consciousness without pain, there is no living without pain, because pain is as worthy a color on the rainbow spectrum of feeling as love and ecstasy and bliss. And the thing with pain is that we have developed so many stories around pain. And the reason is that our ego loves these stories of pain. Our ego knows that at the sacrifice, at the altar of life, the sacrifice that we make for greater degrees of consciousness through the initiations that we go through is pain. And so the ego knows that the more we can hold on to these stories that allow us to resist pain, the more we resist our own awakening. So the reason why coming into more consciousness is so painful is that we are gifted through our expanded consciousness a greater sense of reality. So we are able to see more of ourselves internally, and we are able to see more of the world externally as it is. And that is painful, because then we start to see more of the wounded aspects of the external world and the internal world. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, but the first thing that I really wanted to share is that pain itself is a pure emotion. And what actually causes so much suffering and agony is not so much feeling the pain, because there is an honor and a tenderness and almost a love to our pain. Guys, it's the stories that we have around pain. For some of us, pain equals the fact that we are not safe. So the moment we're in pain, we are not safe and we are in fear. For some of us, pain, we associate pain so much with the fear of abandonment because of the stories that still need healing and nurturing and tending around abandonment. Perhaps our pain takes us into anger and we are so afraid of anger. So often, though, pain is around abandonment and rejection for many of us. And the thing is, if we can unpack these stories of our resistance to pain, we are gifted clues and a map to where there is potential for more living in our lives. Because the resistance to pain is the resistance to awakening, the resistance to living. The resistance to pain is the resistance to transforming and to birthing anew, because we start to resist the death process that's always there in life, the process of letting go so we can invite more in. And just as much as motion is very much a part, it's a universal law, it's a natural law. We operate to the law of motion. There is this constant cycle of death and rebirth in our lives. When we become deeply resistant to pain, we also become deeply resistant to this circular motion in our lives. So there's great value in unpacking what our stories of pain really look like. And the second thing is to understand about this process of awakening is that the pain that we start to experience as we witness greater degrees of reality, we see more of the external world. We also see more of the internal world. And if our bedrock of self-love is not firm, this becomes very difficult. And at this point, many of us start to bypass and cul-de-sac. We start to stillbirth the awakening because we're afraid of the monsters that we see outside and the monsters that we see within. And these aspects, externally and internally, that are monstrous are only monstrous because we don't know them. These are aspects like the rage, the jealousy, the victim, the violence, and when we can allow ourselves to illuminate the shadow without wanting to be hyper-focused on healing and therefore eradicating and separating these parts of ourselves, these parts become less monstrous. They just become parts of ourselves. I know this morning as I was doing some somatic work in front of the mirror and I felt these emotions starting to come through me. One of the emotions that I hadn't worked with before was jealousy. And it was fascinating to allow myself to look in the mirror. What does my face look like when she's jealous? What happens to my body in jealousy? And what are the jealous sounds? I'm like, oh, that's what you look like. This being, this aspect within suddenly becomes less monstrous. I can be so much more gracious to this aspect, and I don't have to let her work insidiously through me because I've illuminated her by acknowledging her. And this is the work of shadow work. I was shown this image of a hen with all of her eggs, and these eggs are our aspects. They're aspects of all of us. And when we come into greater states of consciousness and we suddenly start to become aware of the eggs that we don't like, the parts of ourselves that we don't like, and we push them outside of the nest, away from heart and home, we are surrounded by rot. We are surrounded by the smell of sulfur, as these aspects are still there and close to us, but they're just not being given the nurturing and the holding that they need. And so really this is just impressing on all of us, reminding us all that really in the process of awakening, the process of spirituality, the bedrock is self-love. The work is around our inner child. And if we really want to embody greater degrees of love, if we really want to be warriors and be able to stand the pain of the world by coming into greater and greater degrees of consciousness and seeing things as they really are, the more that we can understand that everything is an aspect of self. So even those political and corporate leaders that so many of us abhor because of the violence that they are inciting on the planet, to understand that somewhere there is an aspect within us that has that potential. When we can acknowledge that, it is so much easier, while we don't condone, while our rage is absolutely holy in its message of like the fuck no, that that person is not separate to us. We can still actually have a chance at standing rooted, strong in reality, bearing the pain of the world, but still reaching for unconditional love. But none of that happens without a bedrock of self-love. If we really want to be the warriors, to awaken, to be able to withstand the pain of this awakened reality while still standing in love, our bedrock of self needs to be so strong. Our gnosis of self, understanding that there are monsters within and all that they are seeking is acknowledgement and holding. We unravel our stories around pain and we keep building that bedrock of love in our process of awakening, guys.